Oh.
You can do okay. Video? Okay. And she suggested that we do signatures and writing. So we have a video. Can you use this one?
It would be at least not if they might show it for once. And you know, we could have so we have a minimum of what we want to do, and then I'll ask.
Those are all
Yeah.
Are they? They look should I say certifiable?
That's true.
Yep, they are.
We're doing a mission in Hawaii. And I have 4 of us on 28 to the 30th. This is the technology. Did you see why I said on the 28th of July? I told my look. Nope. But I can do some eggs. That's not one of the kids that I'll be no time. I said, well, I know. Don't do it once, at least. But it's one of the point practices.
Oh, is that? I'll have to come try them.
My only concern about the why I select my inflatable.
You had it marked? You had it marked?
Is my luggage?
Yeah. What's it, baby?
No. I'm good. There are some that still.
I don't mind going to teaching at ARCAT because the adults don't have to sleep on the floors. They won't put the adults in the garbage.
Check them all.
You usually get a bag?
You get staff housing, you have like a 6-inch mattress. It's slightly better. It's not a real mattress, but they're better.
Yeah, up there, because we have 56 stories. I know, even the lower over to now, it's not there. We're going to sleep with them. And there's 3 highs.
Oh, gosh. No, see, our camp has all kinds of rooms, they just have the officers.
My granddaughter lots of papers before.
Does she? Never noticed.
Wake up the bed.
I guess they can.
Up there.
Okay, yes.
Oh, only the ones down there.
My legal records are always.
You're right.
So weird, we have flowers all over them.
Thank you for sending that to me. Works for I'll have a story my editor said the publisher wants to make it.
We don't want to also,
You know, that's the cousin of somebody who lives here.
We went, I was fine, I went keep stuff in your head. You're gonna keep stuff in your Alright, well, just decide what you want to do, and then, we can look for something else.
Now that we're late. Welcome to the June 19th meeting of the LHUSD Unified School District Governing Board, and we'll open by taking a moment for silent prayer and or reflection. Jerry, if you call the roll, please.
Kathy Cox,
Here.
Pat Rooney,
Here.
Nicole Cohen, here, John Maston.
Here. Please stand and join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to remind everybody that our meetings are recorded, and we would like for you, if you are going to participate in call of the public or discussion, to use the mic up here in front. That way we can make sure that we get you recorded for posterity. We had one call of the public that was filed well in advance of the meeting, and that was by Amber Hoffman. Is she here? I don't see her, so we will push that aside. And we will start off with recognition of visitors, and that would be the Lake Havasu City Education Association. Ms. Nowakowski.
President Madsen, members of the board, Superintendent Asire, directors, staff, I'm not sure if I see any students, but community members. I am Carol Nowakowski with your monthly LHCA update. We had members recently return from our 2018 AEA Summer Institute Conference. At the conference, besides being able to collaborate with other educators from around the state, we also were able to participate in different workshops ranging in finding your why, cultural competence, collective bargaining, what does that look like, advocacy at multiple levels, and bringing forth professional development to our locals to opportunities for all staff, not just members, but lots of different staff members. The conference's final day was spent collecting over 2,000 signatures in a very short time span because of rain. Yes, I said rain. Rain kept us. But we were able to, we went out, it started pouring, we came back in, but we did collect over 2,000 signatures in that short time span, so yay. For the Invest in Ed ballot initiative. If you haven't heard about the Invest in Ed ballot initiative, it is to impact our classrooms for public education by $690 million. It is an initiative that we are collecting signatures to put on the November ballot. If passed, it will impact classroom size reduction, teacher compensation increases, dropout prevention, full-day kindergarten, and compensation increases for student support personnel, including food service, nurses, counselors, social workers, and librarians. If you have not signed a petition, we do have some, and so if you have any other questions about those, I'd be happy to answer any after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4.1 is approval of the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Jerry, if you call it.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston.
Yes. Item 5.1 under old business is discussion and possible action on governing board member vacancy. Superintendent Asire.
Mr. Maston, members of the board, it is recommended that the governing board discuss the governing board member vacancy created by the resignation of Mr. Allen Ward on April 10th, 2018, and possibly take action to appoint an interim board member. I know that we have reviewed the content of this item in the past, and it was postponed until that vacancy was actually occurred, and so that is the point we are at now.
I'll entertain a motion on 5.1.
I make a motion that we leave that position empty until the voters vote in November.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Have we had anyone apply to that position?
We haven't opened it up for applications. I know that we've had some interest. I've had a couple of community members express interest from the community at large. I've had some discussions with a former board member from several years ago that said if needed, he would sit in the seat. I think from my perspective, if we seat somebody, we are simply seating the tiebreaker. We really aren't bringing a long-term thought process to our group. What we are doing is we are saying that in case we get into a 2-2 split, that we'll have that third vote, one way or the other. And while I can see a value in that, I really would like to have the voters send us a fresh member. I think that we are a board that is responsible to the public. It's a relatively short period of time to an election, and that we should allow the voter the opportunity to send the replacement in this case.
I agree.
Well, you know, I've been in a situation in the past, twice I've been elected to the board, and 2 times I was appointed because there wasn't a whole lot of interest in running. So you have that type of a situation. And no one's going to get rich in this job. I think a lot of times they're not even going to get near it. So the thing is, I think a lot of times what happens is if there's an interest, a sincere interest, especially if there's some experience, you do bring in maybe a different point of view. I know it's for a short period of time, but it doesn't appear to me that it would cost the district any money, because as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Diana, in other words, the recommendation would probably come from the board, and then Mike File would make the appointment, right?
That's correct.
Is that how it works? So, and then it appears to me that the elected members of the board would investigate the people that are going to be on there. And we are the elected representatives. So, if we're elected and the public has confidence in us, it would seem to me that in a situation like this, particularly this short period of time, that it wouldn't be of a disadvantage to the board by any means.
I think where the disadvantage comes in is when you look at us appointing somebody into a chair, and if they were to run for office. I think we're giving somebody a leg up on the process of doing that in the short term. I don't know. I think the person that I've had conversations with would do a very good job filling Mr. Ward's seat ideologically. I think we would honor the original intent of the voter. They have said that they are absolutely not interested in running for the November opening. But I don't know that we're actually going to gain anything from that short-term appointment other than a tiebreaker. And I just wonder what's served by it.
When do the nominating petitions have to be in for the people who are going to run for the board?
It's in August. I thought I had it in here. I have it written down somewhere, but it is in August.
Okay. And do we know how many people at all are taken out?
They haven't, but they can't take out yet.
They can't take them out yet?
No, because there's no primary.
Oh, okay. Well, I gave you my 2 cents, so.
Appreciate it. Any other discussion? Terry, we'll call it up.
Kevin Cox?
No.
Nicole Cummins?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
No.
Doug Maston?
Yes.
There you are.
Can I, so this is an example of why I think it would be good to have another person on the board. I mean, this is the first item that we have, and it turns into a tie vote. And I don't think we're going to get people that have, you know, I think you're going to get people that will fill this, that have all the best intentions of doing the best for, I hope, for our students and the community and staff. So I wouldn't see a problem with that. I'm not, I don't know, I guess I'm the type of person, you know, that I have a lot of confidence in people who run for office for the right reason. And I'm sure, particularly for a school board, most of the people I've known over the years, the 16 years I've been on the board and even before that, they run with the best of intentions. You may not always agree with what they say, but a lot of times they bring different viewpoints to the board, and I welcome that. And in fact, actually, oftentimes they've convinced me that their position is right. So I don't have any, I'm not suspicious about people being appointed, and the board would make the recommendation.
I'm not suspicious about people being appointed either. I just don't know what we serve other than we have the tiebreaker. And I think that we've got to look at issues maybe a little bit more closely as we move forward to the end of the year.
I'm going to make a motion, but before I do, Pat, did I discuss this item with you before tonight? Did you have any idea I would have voted no? Did I have any idea that you were going to vote no?
No, I don't even have the, what is your phone number?
There you go. So I just want to make it clear that this just happened. I move that we appoint a board member, but someone who expresses his or her intent not to run for the board in the fall. And of course, if that person should do so, we would have no control over that.
I think if you're going to do that, you need to have a specific name.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have a specific name, but I move that we appoint someone to fill out Al's term until the November election, until January.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Jerry?
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
No.
John Maston,
No.
There you go. All right. Point made.
Anything further on 5.1? We'll move to 6.1, approval of compensation package for the 18-19 fiscal year. Mrs. Asai?
Thank you, President Masden and members of the board. I do have a presentation, but I will go through the rationale first. We are recommending that the governing board approve an additional compensation increase for all staff for the 2018-19 school year. This increase is in addition to the previously approved compensation package that was approved by the board on March 6th. The governor's proposal later approved budget through the legislative, let me read that again. The governor's budget proposal and later approved budget through the legislature provides increased funding for school districts. Additional dollars were appropriated to the base level formula to increase salaries, fund for inflation, and to begin restoring district additional assistance funds. The appropriation of $210.50 per weighted student count to the base level will provide Classroom Site Fund 301 eligible teachers with an additional 7% salary increase while providing an additional 4% increase for all remaining staff. The backup to this item in the presentation format will be provided during this meeting.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on 6.1.
I make a motion we approve 6.1 as presented.
Second.
If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up and present. Please go back. Thank you. All right, this presentation is to provide some background information for our recommendation. It starts out with the information on our budget committee. When we heard the governor had approved this budget or had recommended the budget, the legislature had approved it on May 1st, we did reconvene our budget committee. The budget committee was an existing committee that had been involved with all of the recommendations regarding our override compensation package. We met on May 15th, 2018 and on May 22nd, 2018, and then via email per the recommendation of the committee. The final proposal that was sent out via email was 33 responded yes and 6 responded no. Out of the no responses, I want to clarify that one of those was a classified manager, one of those was a certificated teacher, and 4 of those were classified employees of the 6 votes. I brought this chart back, and I know there's been equality versus equity has been a conversation, and it seems like the conversation swings depending on interpretation. And so the question that comes up all the time is which of these is fair? The same for everybody or differentiation for everybody? And there are examples where both of those are fair, and it really does depend on the context. And so I'm going to refer to that a little bit later. But if you think about the equal boxes versus the differentiated boxes and the size of the person, that can also be a metaphor for the size of the salary that some people get or the size of the compensation that they receive. So the background for the recommendation, and I do think it's important to go back over this, we did adopt for the 2018-19 school year a $650,000 equivalent to 3% increase for all staff. We also approved $200,000 to begin the implementation of a salary study, which I will go back to a little bit. And then during our 17-18 process, we had recommended a longevity structure for this year. And the actual structure that we recommended exceeded the amount of the override by the time it was calculated for the number of employees that we had. So we did come back to the committee with a different recommendation. And based on our discussion, we went back to our original recommendation, which was approximately $900,000. So with our commitment on the $900,000 plus the $200,000 for athletics and a little bit of money to shore up the EBT, not much at all, we exceeded our override by about $420,000. And so in this fiscal year 18-19, we already committed another $420,000 on top of the override to implement the decision here. A portion of that, a little over $350,000, is coming from the High Performing Schools Award, which was one-time funding, and the remainder is coming out of maintenance and operation. The other point that's important to note is that when our community approved this override, we were very emphatic about it being about teacher salaries and about staff salaries and retention and recruitment. We also had great discussion at the budget committee level that because of the condition of the state budget, that we would continue, that we would spend the maximum amount, go for the whole thing, and plan to go out for another override when the next one came due so that we could sustain this. But if we were unable to pass an override, we would have to find the money from our existing budget going forward. And so throughout this process, we keep reminding ourselves that if we don't pass another override, this is the amount we're going to have to find in addition to what we're already spending in our budget. So the ongoing for 18-19 with just this approved settlement is a little over $3 million. My personal opinion, and I know others share it, not everyone shares this, is that because the governor and the legislature have been so emphatic about the additional money for teacher salaries, that it is unlikely that our community would perceive the need for another override for teacher salaries. And so it would be irresponsible for us to assume that we're going to get another override to cover that ongoing commitment of $3 million. The 18-19 longevity supplement, just for you to see, this was a differentiated longevity based on the staff who have been in our district for a long time and had many years of frozen salaries, etc. And so it differentiated starting with the highest percentage at 20 years and the lowest percentage from 1 to 4 years. The other thing that we committed to was to do a salary study. And in that board-adopted resolution, the $200,000 was distributed. We did address administrative salaries. We addressed our psychologists and therapist salaries. And then we also looked at our greatest outliers. We looked at our FSPs, our techs, our speech and language folks, our counselors, and our nurses. And then we did add $250 to the certificated base. So I would like to spend a little bit of time, give the board some information on that. And I do have a handout for that. Sorry, that's my handout.
I was just going to say, are these rankings based off of that?
Yes, I'll share, yes. So you may recall, I know the Budget Committee will recall seeing this document, and we did go over this information with the board. That was the salary study. For staff, this is posted on the L Drive under Business Services. It's named as Salary Study, so this information is out there for all staff to review. And what we did on the salary study is we looked at, and I realize this is small, but it's illustrative of what you have in front of you. We looked at our comparison district ratios. So the salary study identified comparison districts, and that was based on a number of criteria, primarily the number of schools and the number of students that were being served in those districts. And then we added in, when we could get information, we added in Colorado River Schools and Mojave Valley, I believe it was, were the two that we added in. And so we had up to 9 districts that we could include in our comparisons, and as little as 3, I believe, on one of them because of the contracting out of information or of services. And so what we looked at was the maximum entry level. So if we hire people with experience and the maximum education, maximum experience, maximum education that we allow, which are the kinds of people that we try to recruit, or people with experience, how do we compare at the maximum? And so what you will see here is for our directors. Our directors were, for our comparison districts, were number 6 out of 7 districts as the lowest paid. When we did the increase for our director, that brought them up to number 5 out of 7. And so we are in no way highly paid in our director level positions. I have to say that I was a little offended by comments being made about our directors and administrators and how much they are now getting. When you look at our high school principal, he was 7 out of 7. Our middle school elementaries were 8 out of 8, lowest paid. Our assistant principals were 7 out of 8. With the adjustments that we made on the salary schedule, that brought the entry-level positions to, for the high school principals, went up to 5th out of 7. And middle school elementary went up to 7 out of 8, so they're still low. We did look at assistant principal particularly because we recruit often into the assistant principal positions, and so they are now at 4 out of our 8 comparison districts for the entry-level salary. We tried to look at anybody who was below 3 out of the comparisons. Our psychologists were 5 out of 5. We have brought them up now to where they are tied for 2nd, and we have been able to recruit psychologists. Our therapists were 8 out of 8. We brought those up to tied for 3rd now. And our counselors were 3 out of 4. They are still 3 out of 4. We added some to them. But we did want to ensure that our counselors were at least making more than our teachers with the same education for their daily rate. Again, we addressed our nurses. We've had a difficult time recruiting nurses. 5 out of 6 or 5 out of 5 for LPNs and RNs. We brought those up for RNs quite a bit, for LVNs not as much. Then looking at the supervisory positions in maintenance, transportation, food services, our information manager, those positions were already high in comparison to the districts that we looked at, and so we did not look at those initially for adding anything through the salary study. Our computer techs, however, were very low in that scale, and so we did look at the additional compensation for our computer techs, again an area for recruitment. They're now 2 out of 9, and our lab managers, which are now 2 out of 7. We also looked at administrative assistant, and this is the one area that we deviated from looking at the maximum. I did look at the entry level because we've been having a problem getting entry level admin assistants. And so the entry level, we were okay at the maximum, but we were not competitive at all at the entry level. We were 7 out of 9. And so we did bring them up at entry level to 3 out of 9. And actually at maximum, they're first out of our 9 districts. Again, looking at office assistants, library assistants, etc., we were already high in comparison. Our parapros are well paid, our attendance clerks, our crafts and skilled maintenance, and our mechanics, those were third. And so third was kind of a borderline area for us, but when we looked at the comparison districts, the number 2 and number 3 paid was about the same. They were very close together, but the next closest was $2 less per hour. And so we were in the top 3 for our comparison districts. Again, custodians, grounds workers, bus drivers, bus monitors, all were doing well. FSPs were not in our salary comparison because there weren't similar positions. However, we discovered that we have our FSPs that were supervising custodians who made the same that they did. And so we felt like we needed, for their additional duties that were required, that they needed to have an adjustment. And then finally, when we looked at the teacher schedule, this was an area that we knew we were about halfway. We would like to be at 3 or so. We were not there for our entry-level positions. Teacher with a BA, we were 5th. We added the 250 base, we remain at 5th. I do want to share that for the number 2 district, at the top end, a entry-level top-end teacher makes $14,000 more than at a BA level. For the MA level, again, the rate for the number 2 is $17,000 above, and for the MA plus 48, the rate for the number 2 is $20,000 above. These are in very affluent areas, and the likelihood that we could ever compete with them for that level of a candidate is of concern. What I also would like to say, and particularly looking back at some of these, while our principals and directors and also several of the other positions there, what we did is we adjusted the entry-level base at those 3 levels. Most of those folks did not actually see a raise because they were already making more than that entry-level position. So it's not like we handed out raises. When we looked at each of these categories for adjustment, we said which would be greater, the 3% rate that you're getting or placing you on the new schedule. And so for each of those individuals, for the most part, on the administrative side, it was greater to just give them a 3% raise. And so when you look at this, we spent approximately $100,000 on classified positions, psych and therapist positions, that whole category. And most of that, there were a few people there, particularly in a couple of the categories, that they actually got a little bit more of a raise because it was greater than 3%. The certified positions, there were no raises that were actually given because they all were already over time at making those higher wages. But when you look at the amount that was distributed, the 1% towards certified is approximately a 0.34% raise for those people overall to the spending. And if we had spent that money for our classified staff, that equated to about a 1.3% raise for classified. All right. The next area that we need to talk about is our insurance benefits and the EBT recommendations. I think you're aware, since we had this discussion at the board level, that our recommendations were to increase our employee contributions by 25% and 19%. They were subsequently revised to, they were 28 and 21. They were revised to 25 and 19. And then the EBT is going to be looking at strategic planning to create a more cost-effective benefit system. So what we are actually doing as a district is we are increasing our contribution for benefits by 10%. And so that is a $771.82 per employee increase in the contribution. And if we were to spend that money on salaries instead of benefits, that would equal to a 1.85% raise. And that is for the 18-19 school year. We could do that. We could not increase the benefits and we could give them the raise, but then we would have to charge them for benefits. And so it would be a wash. The other thing is when you think about that chart, if we charged all of our employees for benefits, then the people who make the least amount of money would be paying the most out of their salary. And the people who make the most money would be paying the least out of their salary. And so there are some questions about whether people would even be able to continue to work for us if we were to do that. In 1920, we've committed to a 15% increase, which is $1,273 per employee. That is going to cost us almost $675,000. And if we were not spending that on benefits, we could give a 3% raise. But unfortunately, we need to do that to maintain fully paid benefits for our individual employees. So over the 18-19 and 19-20 school year, we are going to be adding over $1 million to our obligations in our budget. And again, if we didn't have that obligation, that would be almost a 5% raise for employees. All right, this chart is it's a little bit busy, and I apologize. I do want to spend a minute talking about this, and I'm going to use the pointer for the board to see on that one over there, if that's okay. So as you're looking at this chart, what you will notice is that for the certified staff, we have, they work 187 days. This is for 2017-18, which is the year that we are just finishing. For 2017-18, we added $2,000 to each of our existing teachers' salaries. And what you see is that the base, we did add to the base, but we didn't add the actual raise to anybody coming in at the base of a brand new teacher. So brand new teachers come in at $33,500. Now when you actually look at, so for a brand new teacher in our district for this past school year, they came in at $33,500. The district paid $7,700 for their health benefits. And then for other benefits, this is a percentage of the base, and so $6,700 for that individual. The other benefits include things like the retirement, the money that they will get out later in retirement. They include Social Security, it includes Medicare. There are a number of things that are included in those benefits. And then the final calculation on our 301 payments for this year, it was a little over $8,000. We take $1,250 out for benefits, and so the employees each realized almost $7,000 for 301, or will do so upon this concluding payment. And so when we talk about total compensation for a brand new employee in Lake Havasu, it's approximately $55,000 that the district has to budget to pay out to that employee. Now in our existing teachers, our teacher that's exactly in the middle, mid-range of salaries right now, the base salary for that individual is $47,779. Again, the benefits, notice that because it's a percentage, what we have to pay for those other benefits is increased. 301 is the same, so the total compensation at mid-range is $72. And then when you look at our highest paid teacher right now, this is regular teachers, $62 is the base salary. Again, adding those, you'll notice that the other benefits go up. So every time that we increase salaries, we also have to increase the amount we set aside for other benefits. Those numbers keep going up as well. And so again, our top person total compensation is a little over $89,000. So when we calculate the average for 2017-18, the average for everybody is $39,162 for all of our employees. And that changes based on how many we have at the low end and how many we have at the high end. And again, when look at the average salary for an employee in our district, and total compensation is $61,700. Now the Auditor General does require that on their website they include the 301 compensation. And so just to give you that amount, on the Auditor General's website, 39 plus this almost 7,000 would equate to an average salary of $46,161 for our 17-18 school year. The bottom half of the chart is 18-19, and again, looking at that, We added only 250 to the base. And if I could deviate to a little bit of the discussion from the work session, that's maybe an area that we would want to look at increasing a little bit more than we have, because other districts are increasing their base a little bit more. But again, this is the already adopted 3% to the rest of the stack here. Our health benefits are going up to $84.89 per individual. The other benefits, again, those go up because the other price base went up. We're anticipating the same amount on our 301. 301 has gone up about $400 a year over the last 3 years, so we expect that it'll be more, but we're calculating it in at what we received this year. And so again, the total compensation for a new teacher in our district will be $56,300. Our current mid-range, you see that goes to $74,500, and our highest paid teacher total compensation next year will be $92,800, almost $93,000. It does put our average total compensation at $64,000. And looking again at the base plus 301, the average salary would be $47,268 for the increase in the 301 in the base. And then if we do add the 7%, which is our recommendation, the base salary for the 7% added to the base plus the 301 for average would be $50,000. Okay, we have the same chart for our classified. And so I've done it a little differently because it's difficult. There's so many people who work different hours and different numbers of days and different hours per day. And so what we have here is the hourly rate for 2017-18. The entry level was $10.50 per hour because of the minimum wage law. Our mid-range person is at $13.54, and our highest range is at $23.74. Now, we included for our classified only those staff that don't have additional degrees. Like right now, our nurses are in the classified, but we pulled them out for this calculation. We wanted a fair representation that our highest level regular maintenance person, that would be the salary there. And because we have so many more on the lower end, our average salary is $13.81 per hour. Now you see the health benefits, and then the other benefits is the amount per hour. And so what we look at for total compensation for classified is what is the amount per hour plus benefits. And you can see that range goes from $12.60 to $16.24 to $28.49, with the average being $16.57 plus benefits. Looking at 18-19, that will be going from $10.50 to $11. And so just to give a sense of the annual salary of a person who works 180 days, 6 hours a day, which would be maybe a parapro, that is $11,800 as their annual salary. And this is with the 3%. Actually, it's not. This is with the minimum wage. I apologize. The health benefit compensation at $8,400, if that individual needed to pay for a portion of their benefits, whether they would be able to sustain employment would be a question. But when we look at the total compensation, again, looking at next year with the 3%, our average goes up to $17.41 an hour plus benefits. So our highest paid classified, 51, which when you add on this additional other benefits comes up to 61,763 plus benefits. So in the conversation, there were some questions, and the chart, you don't need to read the charts, these are the same charts you just had, but, excuse me. For our certified staff, at the top base pay, so without adding anything to that, $63,000, when you talk about, and again, this is for the 18-19 school year, adding the $84.89 in for benefits, health and welfare becomes an additional 13% on their salary. But at the lowest paid teacher, $33,000, the $8,400 is another 25% on their salary. And so the difference is huge depending on how much they make. So when you look at a classified person, the very top paid classified person at 51, their health and welfare is an additional 17% of their current salary. But when you look at the lowest paid, that's another 70% of their current salary. And so again, thinking about how we distribute funds in terms of allocating it towards health and welfare versus towards salary, I think that consideration is important to be aware of. So that is the context for our recommendation. As you're all aware, I believe, and I'll just review it very quickly, the governor's budget did provide an increase, an inflation adjustment of $66.30, a salary increase at $210 per ADM, which gives us a base amount of $39.60. Now, with our teacher education index, that may go up slightly, but that's the base that we worked from. There are some additional reporting requirements with this package. We must update, and they have updated our budget worksheets. You're going to see a sample of that. But we are required to post on our website the average salary of all teachers employed for the current year and the average salary of all teachers employed for the previous year, the dollar increase for the average salary, and the percentage increase. So that has to be posted on our website, and that will be true for every district in the state. And then the ADE will report that to the legislature. There was also a legislative intent that was published. And the governor basically said that the basic state aid appropriation, which was the amount statewide, is intended to be used for teacher salary increases. They also stated that it is the intent of the governor and the legislature that school districts should increase the total percentage of classroom spending over the previous year's percentages in the combined categories of instruction, student support, and instructional support as prescribed by the Auditor General. And so we have two intents that were expressed from the legislature and from the governor, and but they were very careful to say that they are not telling us how to spend our money, that is still the purview of the board. And individual boards should look at the needs of their district in making those decisions. The other area is district additional assistance, and the governor did allow for an increase in that in our budget. We will be building up over the next 6 years to, hopefully, if this actually happens, to full funding of our district additional assistance dollars. To be very frank with you, as the board, we did not put this money on the table to the budget committee. And the reason that we did not is we have some pretty desperate needs in the areas of district additional assistance funding. One of the big areas is safety. We're looking at some things in relation to safety, and to put those systems in place is going to have an expense attached to it. We are not going to be able to do that through bond dollars for another 3 years, and we don't feel like we can wait that amount of time. As you all are aware, we need textbooks. We need the technology to support some of the things that we're doing, including the safety issues. We have desperate needs for furniture if you've walked through a classroom. Many things that were not included in this bond package, including painting and flooring and so forth, those are all areas of need. So this is just a sample of how we calculated the dollar amount available. Mr. Murray has done his ADM calculations, estimates for 18-19. We multiplied that total weighted student count, I'll bring it to you right back here, total weighted student count by the $210 per ADM, and we came up with $1.39 million, and that is the amount we started with in our proposal. So our recommendation is for a final total compensation for our 301 staff at 10% and for our remaining staff at 7%. This includes the 3% that was previously adopted from the override, which is about $376,000 for certified, and then $279,600 for remaining. And then the additional proposal, 7% for certified 301 and 4% for everybody else. You can see the cost breakdown. That was $704,000 and $308,000, and then the benefits, which we have to calculate in at 21%. And so that total came up to, didn't add that together. And then we also, there we go, $1,225,000. Then we also recommended, because this was a priority in the past, and this was actually a priority of the budget committee. This is probably the one area that we were able to decide right away by the committee, is that we recommend that we reinstate the specials as much as possible, which we could do with 6 specials teachers, which cost us a little over $328,000. That comes to a total of $1.553,664,000. And as you recall, we have the 1.39 that was the actual amount per. And so looking at this recommendation, we do look at taking another $163,000 out of our inflation money so that we can do the 6 specials for a recommendation that equals to a 10% for 301 staff and a 7% for remaining staff. Now I would like to point out that the 7% for remaining staff includes many of the people who were listed in the compensation that was done as a result of the salary study. And this is not going to assist us in getting out of our 7 out of 8 positions or 6 out of 8 position. And so, but it is really, I think, critical for us looking at where we were with our teachers to maintain at least the midpoint and hopefully a little bit better as we look at our comparison districts. And the budget worksheet that Mr. Murray has prepared is, if this is passed, it has been revised, and again, looking at it on that screen back there for the board, it's a little easier to read. But for 2019, if we go forward with the additional 7%, that would mean our average salary at $44,206 compared to $41,020 for this past fiscal year. That's a total of $4,000 and 10% on the average salary. This also includes only classroom site fund eligible teachers, and it does not include the 301 or the benefits. That is the context.
I have a question or two.
To my seat.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Are you going to want to look at a slide?
No. So I know that the state gave us 3, we'll call them pots. Call pot 1 was what I call the teacher fund. Call it anything you want, but that would be the 1.3, 1.4 that you use.
Correct.
So I know the amount that came in for that. How much came in for, or I guess it's not in yet, but how much have we been informed that we will get for the district assistants?
I'm going to let Mr. Murray answer that. He probably has a better idea than I.
Next Tuesday, I'll have those numbers finalized, but right now, it appears it'll be around $817,000, right around that dollar amount, based on what I'm calculating today.
And then how much for the inflation fund?
The inflation was about $400,000.
And so you took how much from the inflation fund to pay?
$162,000.
That's right. Okay. So inflation is about $400,000. Okay. So I guess this is, the more I have thought about it, this is my main issue that I have, is I feel that at the very least, all of the board members should have gotten an email and said, this is what these amounts look like. We're going to be possibly holding a budget committee, a salary committee with staff. And so we didn't know these amounts. And number 2, I don't want to know the answer to this, but the question is, who made the decision but the salary committee was told that we're not going to even consider the DAA. That decision was made beforehand. Now, in my way of looking at it, I know when we didn't have enough money for the high school football field because we didn't put enough money into the bond, that the board met and considered, talked about what we were going to do. We threw a lot of things out there, but we pretty much just came to consensus about how to move forward. I think that how to move forward on this, that we could have had a work committee, a work session, and we could have said this or that, but someone set the parameters. The state set parameters, which we must live by. And then someone set parameters on how we're going to look at these 3 pots. If you look, the large majority, if not almost all, of other school districts looked at all 3 pots. We've made a very good case for everything we've needed for years and years and years. But I go back to the one problem that we need to solve. And we've done a really good job of solving, through the salary study, putting some money there. But the people we need to attract and keep are teachers. And we're not competitive because everyone has to give 10%. So in that way, we're not competitive. And that will be, that is my argument, we could not possibly solve that problem with this money or the money that you found. But we could go a little way more towards standing out from that 10%. And that is my issue. I hope I am not the one who offended you when the administrative salaries were discussed, because I thought I made it very clear at least 3 times that I was all for. I think I said I don't begrudge administrators their previous money that they were given and their previous money they're going to get out of this. And I don't begrudge, I'm very happy for the classified. So we still have this problem, and I am concerned that whether it 1 or 2 board members or just you, and that's fine, but I think this was something that we could have had a quick meeting, maybe 2 hours, but we could have said, okay, could we look at the DAA? Should we prioritize? Just give the committee the flexibility to look there. Most districts did. I was in correspondence with a board member from Vail, and she said every bit of this that is all new money. They had an override. Their teachers got 5%. By that thinking, we could have only given our teachers 5% from this and 5% from, for Vail could have given their teachers just 5% out of this pot 1 and 5% from the override, and they would have met the 10% requirement. But they chose not to do that. And so this is my concern, is how this was done. And as I continue to say, I often don't feel informed about things that I think I should be informed about. And this is an example that I think all board members, not just 2, and should have known and established the parameters. I also want to remind everyone that the longevity will after this next year, it will be gone. The deductibles for insurance are going up.
For dependent coverage.
For just dependent coverage, okay. But that will affect the staff member, but that's a valid point. The co-payments for several things, or not a lot, are going up. The other concern that I've had is the people who are getting close to retirement. Our staff hasn't had raises in 10 years, and now we've got these raises. But not only do they not have the money from the raises that they would have had, but their retirement is dependent upon the highest salaries that they've made. They're very close to their retirement, so their retirement is going to be hurt a lot. Not only is their retirement going to be, and I feel like we need to do everything we can. Let's say someone's 3 years from retiring. We give him that extra 3% next year, 3% next year, 3% next year. That's going to make a big difference in what he gets for his retirement. And then I want to point out, there are people sitting here in this room who are going to be retiring, and we're still under a previous board, I forget what year it was, that if you got hired after a particular year, that up until that point, when you retired, the district paid your medical insurance until you went on Medicare. Well, And that's happened. People have retired and they've had that happen until, I guess it's a couple of years ago or so, the employees, the retired employees, were asked to pay $300, $500, something like that. And then last year, one of those employees, or all of them, for medical benefits, it was $1,484. Next year, it's going to be an additional $771, so they're going to be paying $2,255 for their medical benefits. That's a 49% increase. I am sure with inflation that the following year, I hope it's not another 49% increase, but that's all very serious. I am concerned about those teachers and all employees who are heading into their retirement years, and the effect this is going to have. And I think that we should do everything possible to give that extra 3%. Vail said after they took money out of their DAA, they had $500,000 left in that fund. And my estimation will get $817,000. And I know it's not easy, but I think that we should do something. I think it would be, it would show a commitment to our employees that among everything else that we've been doing, that we are going to continue to do everything we can to get things back in order. And we have a chance now because of this infusion of money that just came out of nowhere, totally unexpected. And I myself would like to see that happen.
And if I may respond to some of what you've talked about, I would like to share that the recommendation to not include the DAA was my recommendation. I take full responsibility for that. And that is because we cannot sustain the ongoing commitment that we have made. We will be financially bankrupt in 7 years if we do not assume that we are going to be able to continue that commitment. The district additional assistance funding right now is just initially coming back. It will increase every year. It may very well be that we have to use some of that money to sustain the commitments that we've already made. And if we commit it now, it is committed forever. We don't get that money back. We have other expenses, so we know that in the next few years we may be able to do some other things depending on how the economy goes and whether the governor actually is able to sustain, the legislature to sustain this funding. I just personally think it would be irresponsible to do that. The second thing I would like to address is we are comparing apples to apples, and I don't mean to insult anybody in this room, but I am aware of several districts, and you're talking about giving more. There are several districts that also put their 301 into their salary. And when they do that, they've capped it. In every person that I've talked to, they have a set amount that goes into salary, and they put the rest into M&O to cover all of the other expenses. Whereas we give our teachers every single bit of what we receive without having to worry about 1 year getting more, 1 year getting less. So they actually get additional salary that other districts don't get because it's not in their base. I'm also aware that in at least one of the districts that you were talking about, those teachers, not only do they get their limited, they get a capped 301, but they also are paying for a portion of their benefits. If a district, if they have the sustainability to give the additional money from their override, every district is in a different situation. And I don't think it's fair for us to compare. In looking at recruiting and retaining teachers, I think that we are trying to do the best we can to increase salaries while being fiscally responsible, because there needs to be a point where we have to say, this is what we can do because we want to keep you. You know, we could look at a lot of other options. I do think that the benefits is one of the areas that we have to look at. And I know that our EBT is doing that. I believe, and I think I showed, if we were not contributing as much to benefits, we could be getting greater raises, and there is some hope that we would be able to do so in the future. The other area is when the governor gave us the funding at the $210, the actual amount was enough to get 10% raises to only the teachers who received the 1% raise from last year, which is a much more limited group. Another area of discussion is we wanted to make it to the broadest group possible, but using the funding that the governor gave us was not enough to give 10%. And so if it had been enough to do 10% for every teacher, we could have kept the 3%, but it wasn't. And so by spreading that even more thinly, I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but that does guide our recommendation.
So let's say we can't give another 3%. Can we give another 1%? Out of it?
You have to understand that from our discussion, this is our recommendation. I think that you all can look at the budget and certainly have that discussion. If you would like to commit dollars as a board for a future, then you certainly have the ability to do that. That is not what staff recommends. That's not what I recommend.
Mrs. Sire, I would like to remind the board when we presented in April about the grants and the state of our grants and the fact that we've been sustaining reductions from the federal grants. We're not going to be able to sustain those programs at the levels that we've had because we are getting reduced funding, and we're going to have to look at those needs. And I can tell you our special education population's needs have not decreased but increased. And from a liability perspective, we've made cuts because we do that fiscally every year. We look at how we can reallocate. But we're going to have needs to be able to look at some of our staffing in another year, year and a half. We're going to have to look at what we're going to do, how we're going to pay those, because that level of support is needed. And we're not going to be able to fund it through our grants.
One of the other areas, I'm sorry, Mr. Rennie, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say in relation to that, if any of you read the paper today, you read the interagency will be closing. We do rely on SAP for our elementary counseling, and I also see as we talk about our school safety, I think we're going to have a need to look at elementary counselors as a part of our priority for our funding. And the reality is we just can't do everything that we need to do. And so we have to prioritize. From our conversation, our recommendation today is what we believe is a priority, and certainly it's up to the board.
Yeah, now, according to the people who voted, there were approximately 40 people on the committee.
Yes.
And that represented teachers, administrators, district office people, and
every department.
Everyone.
Yes.
And so they've come up with this, and that's what, and you all have recommended that to the board, right?
Well, in fairness, though, we did not put DAA on the table,
Yeah.
and so we constrained that conversation to a degree.
I want to thank you. And the reason why I want to thank you is because after last year's budget committee, which is what we call the gathering of staff and people, Mrs. Nowakowski, who is the Lake Havasu Education Association representative, came up to me and was just in shock that we had gone that far with it. We are involving our staff in these decisions. These are not made in a vacuum. Secondly, M&O is a single pot of money. Whether we allocate money that, say this money comes from the override or from taxpayer funds outside of the override, no matter how we label it, it's one big pot of money. So when we say we're raising 10%, we're pointing to the override and saying the override justifies this much of the raise. But make no mistake, that money comes out of M&O. It's one pot. So does the dependent benefit. The dependent benefit in Lake Havasu Unified School District, where we're paying roughly 60% of dependent coverage for families in this district from our end, is something you're not going to find a lot of places. It simply is not. And I think that it's something where, could we take that money and give everybody a raise? Yes. Could we leave that money in place and make sure the bottom part of that group is well taken care of, that this is 70% of their overall compensation? Yes. I think total compensation is a very smart conversation to really have in this, because when you hear that some districts put part of 301 in, or some districts don't pay for this, you got to pay for your part of your benefits over there. I think as a company, as Lake Havasu Unified School District, we're plowing every last dime we can into compensating our staff. When you look at M&O, and M&O is designed to be where the pay comes from, 85 cents out of every dollar goes to pay and benefits. It's not 70%, or it's literally every dime. When you start talking about then having to pay the power bill and taking another $1 million out of the little bit that's left out just to pay the lights, we're literally committing just about every dollar we can at that point. I'm actively recruiting a network technician. I'm talking to a guy in Southern California. We're talking pay and compensation, but in that conversation, he shared with me he's paying $20 a day in gasoline to commute. I'm pretty sure that's valid down in Southern California as well. Take that out over a year, because you don't only commute to work, you commute to the grocery store in Southern California. I mean, you're driving everywhere. $7,000 a year, thereabouts, just to put gas in his car that he is spending over, above, and beyond what we have to pay here. So we start talking about salary and affordability. That's something that's got to come into that thought process when you start looking. Again, I'll say what I said last time, Kathy. It's not perfect. Nothing ever will be perfect. Would I like to see $160,000 back in that we're taking out of the inflation funds? Yes, I'm a guy that likes to balance things. On the opposite side of that, I think we have a need to commit those dollars into other areas. So I'm willing to compromise. Do I think we should be spending DA money? No. I think we're going to need that DA money down the road for a lot of other things. And I want to make sure that we're taking care of what we need to take care of. I think we've got a pay plan on the table to do these increases that nobody thinks is perfect. Everybody's a little bit upset at, and I'll say it again. That's probably the best sign that you've struck a very good deal when nobody's really happy with it. There's nothing like a little shared suffering to get everybody to go, yeah, I didn't like it, but hey, my paycheck's going to go up. Maybe not as much as I wanted. I've looked at the data in the Republic in the June 3rd article. What did I see? I saw some districts giving 13%. I saw a single district get to 16. I saw a lot of districts putting lump sums down. If we put a lump sum down on the low end, we would look wonderful because we'd be at 13, 14%. Top end, maybe not so much. Maybe not a lot of equity in that, but a lot of equality in that. There's also 59 of those districts in that same June 3rd article in the Republic that are giving less than 10%. I think we've done a very good job in balancing so that we can get the 10% number out there. And I think that's very important because when you start going back to that legislative intent, the legislative intent, when you look at the top level, what the public perception is, it's 20 by 2020. So if they send the money, you got to find 10% this time through, because if you don't, you're not working the legislative intent the way that you should as far as what the public sees. So I think there's a lot of very good reasons that this is the right plan. Here's the other thing. We answer to the public as a board. Our fiduciary duty is to take care of and manage the public's money. I'd love to say I work for the employees of Lake Havasu Unified School District, and there's going to be some of you that are going to go, what you do. And in a way I do, but there are 50,000+ people out there that are expecting us to do the right thing and have good, sound financial management of the school district. And that's who the board is ultimately going to answer to. And we need to make sure that we're doing the right things so that when we get to the point where we have to start talking about, do we renew the override or not? Do we need more bond money or not? That we have done the exact right things for the public to say, you're right, you're absolutely right, we're here to help you if you need help. Unfortunately, a lot of what has happened, in my personal opinion, is going to hurt that at some level. I think that the fact that we're putting these raises in place, and it's a 20% raise, and the way that it's going to line up, it's going to make it very tough to sell an override. I think that's where we're going to have trouble. The override going away is going to affect this district, staffing and pay, and we need to do our best job now to plan for that, prepare for that, and be ready to make the impact as minimal as possible in Lake Havasu Unified School District. It's just where I am, honestly, my thought process on it. So that's where I'm at.
I just want to clarify.
Maybe I could have my say before we start going to somebody having a second round.
I didn't know you wanted to say. You go right.
Thank you. My biggest concern is the $3 million in ongoing costs. And, this committee that got together that helped pass the bond and the override, it was our intention for those of you in the room that were on that committee that we were going to be unified as a district. We were not going to be out complaining to our community. We were going to find a way that we could rely on our community to do an override so we didn't have to worry about jumping through hoops at the state. Anybody that was in that committee can correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent was to go out and prime our community to continually pass an override. And that's how I sold it personally to the people that I spoke with was, we need to take care of our teachers, our staff, we need to take care of our problems locally. And this $3 million that we've now committed in ongoing dollars, after everything that has happened in our community with this Red for Ed, in my opinion, there's no way we'll ever pass another override, regardless of what the governor does. And that's really unfortunate. So I say we don't touch a dime of that district, that DAA money, because of this fact, this $3 million that we've already committed to our staff. And I just want to make that really clear because, I hear a lot of people complaining, but I don't hear anybody on this side thanking the staff for all the hard work that they have put in for the past few years, trying to be thoughtful of all your concerns, all the benefit issues that we've had, the longevity. Anytime somebody brought up something that maybe they hadn't thought of, they would go back, and that's really disappointing for me as a board member. So I can understand that people want more money. Everybody wants more money. I want any money. I don't get any money. But I think that we have to be responsible, as John said. So I just want to make sure that we always keep that $3 million ongoing cost in mind, because that's committed, and we do have to keep the business running, so to speak, regardless of what happens at the legislature, which kind of was the intent of the ongoing override in the first place.
So I wanted to clarify something that John said, that some districts in the Arizona Republic said that they were only getting a 9% raise.
Or less.
But they can't, because they're required to get a 10% raise.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. There's no requirement.
The legislature, Ducey did not require that at all?
They passed out the money and they said, do your best.
Okay. Well, this, again, is why I would like to have been informed of all of this, because that was not my understanding. I understood that every district had to get a 10% raise. And the next time we go through this, I think it would help if all of the board members are given this explanation of what the state requires, what they don't require, where the flexibility is with us. It would have helped me an awful lot, because I was told something different, because I had no other information. And then the other thing is I know that it was said that our staff, it's a package of $55,000 at the work session, and I just want to clarify that the overall package of someone making $55,000 that person is actually getting a $30-something thousand a year paycheck, if you want to put it that way.
Just may I interject that is not necessarily true, and I'm happy to clarify that after you're done.
Okay, and that when that person gets, every 2 weeks gets a check, then the raise, the 10% increase is not going to be on the $55,000. It's going to be on the base. So I think that's very important to get out there for the public, so that they don't think that people are getting a 10% raise on $55,000.
You're not only getting the raise to the base, you're also getting a raise to the retirement and the Social Security contribution and so on. There's extra things past that the district is putting in for. But I think when we talk internally about pay, I think we are much better served about total compensation. It really, when you start, if you were to talk to another district and you were to walk in and you were to say, what's your base pay, and you did a comparison on base pay, and then you showed up for work and found out that you had to pay the full boat on your dependent coverage and maybe even perhaps part of your base insurance, that may not have been your intent. You may actually be at a lower overall paycheck at that point than you would be here. I hate to say that, but I think that's a very true possibility.
Well, it's like Anna said, if you look at every district, it's apples and oranges. It's very difficult to
But total
compare.
compensation gets you to apples and apples. Total compensation, all in what the district is completely paying for that employee.
That's fine. I just don't want it out in the public that someone is making 55, that this particular person in this particular category is making 55,000, that person gets to spend when they get their paycheck every 2 weeks.
I'm sure David could put a breakdown from that presentation if you were to use that.
And I did put a breakdown in the comment section of the article that I was quoted in, and I did break it down what that 55,000 was for, the base level, and that was the 2017-18, so it was the 33.5 base level. So I can appreciate that, but I did say out the door. I didn't say $55,000.
Social Security, Medicare, and work comp are required by all employers. Those aren't benefits for us.
And there's also those of us that don't have this district insurance, but yet it's compensated in our pay of 55, whatever, take home, but yet we don't take the insurance. So that's not correct either. And that's where some of us have some big issues who are not taking the district insurance.
Can I call for the question? Please. Call for the question.
Nicole Cohen?
Yes.
Kathy Cox?
I will vote for this because I have confidence in Diana, and I appreciate the work of the committee. I still am concerned that we are not competitive. I want to be competitive, and we're not, but I will vote for it. Besides, I know it's going to pass anyway, and what's the point of not voting for it? You know, really.
You should vote. You surrender.
Sort of. I'm very pragmatic.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
John Masden?
Yes. Action item 6.2, appointment of employee benefit trustees. Got my name on it.
Yes. Members of the board, as you are aware, it is the responsibility of the governing board to appoint the trustees to the Employee Benefit Trust Board. And we do have 2 vacancies that will be occurring as of June 30th of this year. Our employee community member expiration is 6/30, and our at-large community member is expiring as well. So the business department has solicited applications for the EBT trustee, and we have those applications in front of you. So it would be up to you to have a discussion about those applicants and determine determine if you would like to appoint me to the board.
I would entertain a motion on 6.2.
Are any of those applicants here tonight?
I would entertain a motion on 6.2.
Make a motion, will you approve 6.2?
We have to select
He's
names.
looking for a name, that's
Oh,
why.
you're looking for a name.
I don't know these people, and I've
They can't.
read, so I can't.
Okay, let me make a motion. I move that we open discussion on action item 6.2.
Second.
Ed
Okay.
Rodney?
Yes.
Oh, never mind, go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
I'm rushing this along.
The floor is open for discussion. Do we have any of the applicants here this evening?
Yes.
Do we?
All right.
Why don't we start with the community members that might be ready?
Do we have any non-district employees that are here tonight?
I was contacted by Debbie White. She's extremely sick, but she wanted the board to know that she's committed to serving on the board. And she's heard all about it for a few years, so that's one of our community members that applied. So,
Is it appropriate to say the names of the three community members who applied, or?
yeah, sure.
We have Julie Sassine, who works at House Regional Medical Center. We have Debbie White. She's retired.
Yes.
She was a part owner in Sugar Brooks Cafe and then Debbie's Delights. Debbie's background includes finance. She worked for Lake Havasu City's Financial Services Department during her career. Julie Sassine has a Bachelor's of Science from Grand Canyon University, is Director of Business Development and Physician Relations. Our other community member at large was Debbie Sherwood.
She was actually at the work session. I don't think she realized.
Right. But she was an executive assistant and assistant superintendent at Victor Valley Union High School District in Victorville, California. So those are our three applicants from the community at large.
They all look qualified, and I'll have something to contribute. But I only know one of them.
Which one?
Julie Sassine. She's a very involved parent, and she's really gone through the hospital, being, I don't know if she was ever a nurse. I can't remember that when I knew her. But she's just really moved up to the top, and she is a go-getter. She's very devoted to what she does. She works hard on things, and she's just the kind of person you have a lot of confidence in.
For our employee applicants, I'm going to go alphabetically by last name. I've got Amy Barney. Amy, would you like to come up and say something?
She's out of town.
She laughed. She bailed?
No, she's out of town.
Oh, yeah, okay. Nina Mersing.
Hey, what can prop do?
Hello. Or you just want me to tell you why I applied for the position?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to have the chance to serve my fellow employees and work with some of the other people in our district and community to try to make sure we have a benefit package that, sorry, I didn't plan this. Let me plan my speech a little bit better here. Sorry. Just to make sure we have a benefit package that's attractive to people and retains our employees.
Do you see large problems currently with the benefit package?
I have served on the committee. Last year, I came to the meeting where the actuary came and gave his report. I actually had taken a sick day and used it for some of my observation hours for something else. So it was very enlightening to see some of the reports that they had to share. So some of them were concerning. I do feel like we're headed in the right direction, and hopefully as a collective group we can find a way to fix the problems.
Okay. Any questions for Nina?
Well, I have a whole list of questions, but I don't want to do that to anybody, so let me pick one. Hold on. Okay, I'll ask 2 questions. So, what does employee benefits mean to you? I know that's, it sounds like a vague question, but when we talk about, because very similar answers on all the employee sheets about wanting to provide the best, make sure that the employees get the best benefits, but I wonder if you have in mind what that might mean.
Honestly, I don't have any background in medical insurance. I'm not going to act like I do.
Sure.
I know that it's gotten rather expensive over the years, and so it's definitely going to be hard for us to attract employees when a lot of our salary is going towards their health care. And on the other hand, everybody has to pay for their health care. So coming up with a balance between, what is the market value, so to speak, for insurance and what we're paying. I'd like to learn a little bit more about the trust itself. I know that it was originally designed as something that was going to be a little more cost effective to our employees, and because of some of the things that have taken place, it's not actually doing that. So it's not as cost effective to the employees as we anticipated that it would be compared to purchasing outside insurance. And so I don't know all of the ins and outs and details, but I do like to review all of those things when they're presented to me, and I do like to work with a team to kind of come up with creative ways, and sometimes you have to think outside of the box. And so I think that the benefit package is something that will help us attract and retain employees. And as far as that goes, I'm guessing it's just the health care that we can offer, and maybe the medical care and the dental and the vision, and possibly some life insurance, and all of those things make it more comfortable for you as an employee. And we all need to pay health care. We all have to have health care. People get sick, and we all have families, and so that's what a benefit package would be to me, something that is somewhat affordable and you can actually utilize it. And I think as a whole, healthcare has kind of become something it's not that affordable. Right. And people are paying huge premiums, and then they have to pay these large deductibles on top of it, and these co-payments on top of it. And so I'm just interested in finding a way that we can maybe make it a little bit better.
I appreciate that. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
My heart is thumping.
I don't have any insurance background.
I didn't expect to be asked questions. I apologize.
Well, we've never had this process before. Really.
Okay. I kind of thought maybe people would call me before this day, and I just wasn't quite sure what to expect, to be honest.
And then the only other question I would ask is, if you were selected as one of the trustees, would you commit to reading the minutes?
Yes.
So that you knew the history and the background of the trust?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's only that.
What was that?
It's only about that.
Oh, okay, I'll get started.
It's only 30 years.
How big is the font?
12. I think it's 10 point type. Maybe 11.
12. I think it's 12.
Is it 12?
Yeah.
But there's 30.
30 years.
But it's all back here and we have copies now.
Any other questions for Nina? Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question that's of, maybe it's of the board, because I could tell in a general meeting like this, when you've got a number of applicants and you're going to ask questions, it just seems to me that if you're really going to try to do a real good job, that what you should do is you should have prepared questions, and that and the board could do this rather than if there's some suspicion about the selection process, the whole board could have gone ahead and had a meeting where these people were scheduled in to come in and these questions prepared like we do on everything else. What I'm thinking of is this is, so here we are and we're going to make this decision, we want to make this decision, and to me, it hasn't been done in the right way. So that these people can come in right in front of the board on a scheduled thing, and they can, you know, have 10 or how many questions you want, and then you evaluate them not only on their applications, but you evaluate them on their ability to answer the questions to see if they're the people who should be selected to the board. Now, I just think this is a disservice to not only the board, but also to the selection process for the EBT, and I think it's the same for the people who are going to be interviewed, to come up here.
Well,
and to me, it lacks a certain degree of professionalism.
I will agree with you. But we didn't have this before at all. It was literally somebody who was handpicked in prior years.
But we've had time to do this because we knew we were going to replace someone. And it almost seems to me that if we really want to do a good job by the people getting interviewed, by the board itself, and by the members of the EBT, that we would just postpone this and do it the right way.
I think that's a bad idea. We've got, the terms expire, so we want to trust without a board? Without members? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but again, I would have appreciated if maybe you had called John and said that at the work, during the work session, if that had been brought up, or, you know, I didn't think we were going to interview people. I didn't know how this process was going to go.
Okay, but I'm looking at this, and it says that the expiration is, well, I've got 2/19, 2/20.
Yeah, but we're looking at these two.
Okay.
And they're, no, these will be the new ones, but they're expiring this month, so I understand what you're saying, and I'm pretty sure that this will never happen again for a trustee.
We had time to interview these people before the term expires.
Is it possible to go back to the application and look at like the purpose of the application and maybe if you guys all have those applications and you can look at like what the qualifications and the purpose, what you're looking for? I mean, I looked online to...
I apologize, Nina, I didn't mean to put you on the spot and ask you questions. And I actually asked you easy ones because I did feel uncomfortable too. It's, you know, it's a new process.
And actually, my feeling is you bothered to show up.
Right.
So it seems to me you got a heads up on all the others that aren't here. But I don't know if that's the best way to put a person on this board.
I agree with Kat.
Well, I appreciate what Mark just said because we do have in the application itself, it does say desired qualifications.
It says right on the top of this application, it says Lake Havasu Unified School District Governing Board is responsible to appoint interested citizens to the Employee Benefit Trust Board. You are invited to attend the evening board meeting when appointment is to be considered and be prepared to answer questions at the top of the application. The board secretary will inform you of the meeting date. Was that done? here we are.
I don't have a problem with that, John. I just think that if, in everything I've ever seen, if you want to, and you've got multiple applicants, and you're going to narrow it down to 2, and if you're going to do that, it's done in a little different manner than a public meeting.
But we did this last time. With Dr. Atasi, it was a public meeting, all the other new trustees, and we had their applications up on the big screen, didn't we?
We did.
We didn't interview them.
Well,
They weren't all.
they weren't all here. Some were here,
Well,
and we did ask some people questions.
I don't think it's whatever. I think Pat's right. I think that that's how we should do it.
And maybe in the future we do that.
I think-
I don't disagree with that thought process.
Well-
I think that we can refine it to that.
It does have to be done in a public meeting,
Right.
so it could be a special session that you schedule for just that purpose.
But maybe we should have the same
You know,
questions, maybe.
then if that's the case, and I've looked through this, you want, I'll make us some recommendations.
Well,
One more candidate.
we have one more candidate.
Okay.
and In the interest of fairness, we'll let Kelly come up.
All right. I didn't know she was here.
Sorry, Mr. Rooney, but I disagree. We need to be able to come up here and give our experience and our knowledge without, I can go on the internet and I can Google and give you answers to all your questions. It doesn't mean that I'm a good candidate. I think it's just like a job interview. I'm coming and I need to answer your questions with what my knowledge is.
Yeah. I'm not going to give you the questions ahead of time.
I know, but...
You know, I was a former teacher. I'm not
Right,
gonna
but I
do
mean,
it.
as a board member on a trust, we would have to be able to speak to people in an audience. We'd have to be able to ask questions, we'd have to be able to answer questions. So I don't think this is any different than that. My background is I've worked as an injury adjuster in Michigan for auto insurance claims. So I was responsible to get with the injured person in the car accident, had to get the paperwork, get their bills paid. Michigan's a coordinated state, so we worked with the insurance companies. I had EOBs I had to read and deal with. Moving to Arizona, I worked at the hospital for several years. I was in the business office, anywhere from admitting patients to supervising to billing, EOB postings. I did analyzing patient records. I had to analyze the records to make sure that they matched the billing so that way we got paid properly and we weren't misbilling. So reading EOBs, reading medical bills, coding, all that information I'm familiar with and have a background in. I have different backgrounds in different types of insurance. I've had Michigan type insurance, I've had hospital insurance, I've had our trust insurance, I've had the state trust insurance. So I have knowledge of all different types of insurance, benefits and costs plus benefits, deductibles, so different things with that. I decided to go for this because I feel that we need to have an employee on there who has an actual value and is getting these benefits and has some voice for the rest of the staff in our district. It's one of 5, so I think that one person who actually is receiving the benefits and knows the ups and downs. Like Nina mentioned, our benefits are decreasing, our benefit cost is increasing. A lot of push I had this year to make me kind of push forward was when my husband went to have allergy testing and none of it was covered because we have to pay the deductible. And our employees, I'm sure, are facing thousands of dollars in medical bills, and I think we need to make sure that our employees are not putting that money out in addition to paying high premiums. So that's why I went forward to applying for the trust.
I've got to ask.
Okay.
Do you feel that the premiums that are paid by the district are high?
No. I don't feel our policy matches those premiums. I don't feel they match together. Does that make sense?
Have you looked at private market insurance lately?
Have I lately?
Yes.
Well, no, I have insurance.
Okay.
I have a question, just based off your your application. So under why do you want to serve, you wrote, I also want to make sure that the benefits are not being abused and being used in the best way. Can you tell me what that means?
At the hospital, you learn the worst. At the hospital, the worst patients were the employees. We had meetings just like our trust does every year about how benefits are being spent and where cost effective is, and your employees are your worst abusers of an insurance policy. So I want to make sure that that we're using it properly, that we're not going to the emergency room when we could be going to the clinic or to or like, it's not Troyer anymore, but Next Care, thank you. So I want to make sure that we're using it properly and appropriately. I also want to make sure that, I know we fought for several years to get the diabetic pumps for some of our employees, because certain things are more cost effective and easier for people. So I want to make sure that we're looking at all of our options and we're not just going with what, and I know that person's gone now, but with what one person's saying. Someone who's willing to ask questions and maybe look at other options and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kelly.
Anybody else there?
That's it.
Can we have questions from the public?
Yes.
You want me to go first?
They should be directed to the board, yes.
So one of the questions I had had to do with the application that was online and the desired qualifications. And as a sitting EBT member, and Mr. Rooney, I know that you're on the board with me as well, and you know that over the last 2+ years, I've had, not quite so much the last year, but it's been an uphill battle trying to convince a lot of people that we had a broken system, and it's been very difficult to try and get to where we are. And I remember, and I use this a lot in comments and conversations I have. I remember you telling me once, I'll only give you one opportunity to lie to me and you'll never do it again. And we had that happen a lot. And so I just want to make sure that when we're looking at, and when you're considering anyone that's applying for this position, that you're looking for people that are going to help us to move forward into a place that the benefits that are going to be provided for all of the employees at the district are going to be those that are fiscally responsible and conservative. And because our duties as EBT members are to be responsible for the dollars to make sure that they are there when they're needed. And that may not necessarily be the greatest and best benefits, but they have to be, the money has to be there when it's time to spend it. But the desired qualifications that were listed on the application show experience in finance, insurance, legal, medical, health, administrative, governance, experience serving in nonprofit board commitment, and volunteer to serve. I can tell you, and I know that Mr. Rooney knows this, I've spent hours and hours, going over, some of the reviews and recommendations and things. So it is a time commitment, but also just making sure that we have the best that's available. And if we do have people that you are considering that have applied, that do have those kinds of backgrounds, whether that be financial or medical or whatever, I would like for you to consider those, because there is an awful lot still yet to fix. And I think that we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go.
In going over these applications, my biggest concern is that we have very much a lack of prior board experience. And I know you can't serve on, you can't get board experience without being invited to serve on a board, and I understand that. But when I look at even one or two of the community members, the answer is no. One of the valuable tools that you have, or that you get from serving on a board, is knowing the ebb and flow and the push and pull of a board, and there's a rhythm and a cadence and how things work, and I think that to me is as important as a financial background. I think a reasonable person can sit on a board and make a good decision if they understand how boards work. So that is a concern of mine. I'm going to throw one name out that I think is going to do a very good job on this board, and that's Julie Sassine. I think I can very much support her. And I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, and I'm going to throw out a thought. I value employee input and I value employee representation, but I also know where the EBT is right now. And the EBT is in a pretty weird financial spot. There's a lot to unpack, there's a lot to unwind, and there's a lot to do. I don't want to slight employees, and I want to be as politically correct there as I can be. I'm almost leaning to Debbie White. And the reason why is because she has the financial background of the city. That said, Amy Barney intrigues me a little bit. And so I've got those three spread out in front of me. And I think if we did Julie and Amy or Julie and Debbie, I could support either grouping.
Well, I will say that I have received calls from lots of teachers very much in support of Amy Barney. She's not here tonight. So I wanted to throw that out. I could make a motion. Can I make a motion now? You ready? All right.
We've got to close the discussion, and then we can entertain a motion on candidates.
Do we need a motion to close the discussion?
Well, I would like to make a motion. I make a motion that we approve Debbie White and Julie Sassy to be the two employee benefit trustees.
I'll second it.
I'd like to explain why. You know, there's not going to be making anybody happy if you don't put an employee there. But after we fought so hard to make those meetings public, I didn't see a lot of employees coming to the Employee Benefit Trust meeting. And I know there's a lot of different people have different reasons for that, maybe because it was so easy to watch them online. But I think that the employees think that their job is to get as much as they can out of the trust to get the best benefits. And that concerns me. And I think that it might be wise at this time, considering all the financial implications that I fear could be coming. I'm not satisfied with where we are in the trust, that it might be best to have people who aren't so attached to it until maybe the next term. That's my reasoning. Anyways.
Is it possible to ask a question regarding that?
We have a motion on the floor and it's open for discussion. You may approach the mic and do what you need to.
You want me to go to the mic? Is that what
Please.
says? Okay, sorry.
Regarding being at the meetings, I know it has officially been changed. And so the first meeting is not until July 19th for 5 p.m. for all staff to be at. In the past, it's been at 3, and it's very difficult for staff. Myself alone, who comes from Oro Grande, I would have to leave before contract time to get over here, which, you know, I do the best I can. Sometimes I've missed them if they show up. I mean, if you guys finished early.
So I think that statement, until we have a 5 o'clock meeting, that I know the board had, the EBT board has changed as of, when was it, Marcia? Yeah, the April meeting, May meeting?
We did it in April.
Right. And so the next
But our
meeting.
meetings have been 3-4 hours long too.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's just my only thought with that statement.
I appreciate that. I just see it from the perspective of where we were April of 2016, where the whole district was freaking out over the increase in premiums and the fight that then ensued just to get to an open, just to get them to be open meetings. And things kind of got a little bit better in the district after some leadership changes in that time period, but it's like, oh, they'll handle it. And I understand that you couldn't be there at 3, or not you, but anybody couldn't be there at 3, but maybe with the way, it was going, being told that your, dependent premiums were going to go up so much, maybe you would make arrangements to be there if it was that important to make sure. And then even if you couldn't come, I don't know, I can't speak for Marcia, but I know that I wasn't getting any phone calls from anybody. I wasn't getting anybody communicating with me, and I went to all of those meetings until just recent, times. So I just think we're in a really tough spot, and again, I shared John's, comment that I don't want anybody to feel slighted, because I'm sure they will, but I just think that we're really still in a tough spot, and I think it might be good to be impartial and not have somebody there as an advocate for employees, because everybody who donates their time, whether they're sitting on the trust or the school board, obviously cares about what's going on in the district, and they're trying to do and make the best decisions possible. But I think for the short term, it might be best to just have impartial people that just are not attached until we can get through it and get it cleaned up. That's so.
Lisa?
Okay.
Okay, I guess just a couple things. I was at a lot of those meetings, and I had to get time off for those meetings, which I did. I would like to request that you consider that one of the positions be whichever of the employees you would deem most qualified. I feel slighted with this comment among others this evening, that the employees would have anything but the most diligent, utmost level of importance for keeping our trust sound, because obviously, to put it bluntly, we're screwed if the trust goes under. Who would want to protect it any more than us? For us to say that the employees just want to get the most that they could from the trust without regard for its health is, to be honest, insulting. I had another point, but I lost it. I think that when people were concerned 2 springs ago with regard to the EBT, it was when everybody was concerned about the EBT and nobody was getting any facts. And I agree that the changes in leadership and the changes to the board that have been made have made extraordinary strides toward that. I believe that anyone whose application is strong should be considered. I would like for them to be considered as an employee and not dismissed, it seems, because they are an employee.
Can I make a comment to that?
Yeah.
Because from my perspective, when I look at applications at my office, I'm looking for the most qualified candidate that will be the best fit into the group. When I look at the applications, I'm looking for board experience, financial background, a background in medical at some level. I'm looking at a preset criteria in my own mind of what I would think would be a good cog to put into that board.
And you stated 3 names, which were
Right.
pretty easily dismissed by others.
Actually,
I'm not
we've got-
discounting the
Actually-
potential strengths of the community members at large, but I think that this is an important precedent-setting position that we are in, to the point that we are losing Carrie's board seat, and in losing Carrie's board seat, we have seen significant lack of communication with regard to what's going on with the EBT to the staff. Over time, again, much improved.
Okay.
But I believe that it's just something to be considered.
The 3 names that I put out,
Mhm.
2 of them are on the floor right now.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But again, it didn't seem like there was discussion with regard to
Aren't there a
anybody.
number of board seats coming up?
Yes.
I mean,
The next board seat available is Hal and Marcia's in 2019. So next year, we have more space to add people.
Again, I just felt like I needed to respond to a couple of the comments.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's so hard not to offend this room. It's really hard not to offend everybody. It's like we can't all just be adults and have a conversation.
You're
Because,
trying pretty hard, Nicole.
We've actually got one.
Am I?
Touch base with you. Yeah.
Am I trying pretty hard?
All right.
Okay.
We're getting sideways here, and this is not a place where we want to get sideways. Do we have any further discussion pertinent to the motion on the floor?
I think it's absolutely essential to keep a staff member on the EBT.
Why? Why essential? Because we had staff members and they failed us. Failed us. Since I'm so offensive, let me be really offensive. They failed us.
Who failed us?
Our staff members that we had on the EBT.
Put their names up there.
Carrie Thompson.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you.
How did she
What did
fail
Carrie do that
EBT?
Well, she refused to ask the tough questions. And that was a big problem for a long time. I'm sorry. It really was a big problem. It's a problem we are still fighting. And I'm sorry that that's offensive. But you know, we're dumping money into this trust, taking it out of your pockets for your raises. And these are things that should have been worked out a year ago. We had Carrie as a chairman for a year. And I think she's a great girl. We've disagreed. We've had our battles. But I think it's so critical at this point that we have somebody that is not emotionally attached. And you're not giving me a reason why it's critical. I think it's critical that we have somebody not emotionally attached until we have all the answers that I started asking for in 2016 on behalf of many people sitting in this audience, Nisa.
I'm not discounting the work that you've done
Okay,
for me.
well, I'm just saying we still don't have some of the answers that we've been asking for since 2016.
As president of the EBT board, Carrie was not there necessarily to ask the tough questions. She had other people who asked them, and she listened to the answers. I think she did a wonderful job, and the main thing is that the staff had a lot of confidence in her, which is probably why a lot of staff members didn't show up for the meetings. And I will answer your question. I have never, ever seen any instance of any committee, organization, or whatever that didn't do better when it had a representative from the very people that this group was all about as far as serving. What you're saying just doesn't make any sense. Someone there that people can call, a person brings questions to the EBT board, this came up, this wasn't working, did you know that this was not happening? Someone that is there who will make the rest of the board aware that these things, some things are not being followed through on, some things that were advertised as working this way are actually not working this way, they're working another way. It's very important to have that person on the EBT board. I don't know where you're coming from.
With the meetings open to the general public, is that actually still an issue?
Every person can be there to represent their interests if they've got a problem. That's why we fought so hard to make them open. You know, you all were kept out of those trust meetings for years, illegally.
Right.
You were kept out of those meetings. And we fought to make them public. And so you can be your own advocate. If you have a problem with something, the agenda goes up, you can go in and say, I don't like this, I don't like what you're doing. And you've got community members that are sitting there that will listen to you. But when you're in charge of agendizing things and you don't want to push for the answers, that's a problem for me. So I don't know that it's imperative to have an employee on the trust until we finish getting the answers that we started asking in 2016. And until we figure a way to sustain this trust, I just think that it's important that we have people that maybe aren't so emotionally attached to it. I mean, that's how I feel, and I'm really sorry that it's offensive.
I call for the question.
If we have a second, I did not.
I second it.
Kathy Cox,
No.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Pat Rooney,
No.
John Maston,
It's moot if I vote yes or no, but I'll vote yes just to be fun.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Do you say nominate? Or I recommend that the board accept Julie Sassine on the.
I'll second that. Any discussion? I'll call for the question.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes.
I move that the board appoint Amy Barney to the EBT trust.
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the question.
Nicole Cohen,
No.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. Item 6.3, approval of the elementary school student handbook for the 18-19 school year. Superintendent Sire?
Thank you, Mr. Masden, members of the board. It is recommended that the governing board approve the 2018-19 elementary school student handbook, which had a complete revision for 18-19. We do have one unified elementary school student handbook for all of our district elementary schools, and this will be available online for students, parents, and staff. A copy of this handbook was provided to the governing board prior to the meeting, and I believe that Ms. Kirasi is here to answer any questions should you have any.
Need a motion? I make a motion we approve the 2018-2019 elementary school handbook.
I second.
And I have a question.
She's right there.
Well, maybe it's, and this is not a specific, on page 9, it says out-of-district transfer students, students who transfer into our elementary schools from outside of Lake Havasu Unified School District during the school year will not be given a grade on their report card for a particular quarter in which they transferred unless they have been enrolled for a minimum of 4 weeks. But I have a question. I ran into this when I was at the high school. Sometimes you would have these kids come in and they hadn't been in school at all. Let's say they missed 4 weeks. How is that handled? In other words, they haven't been in school for whatever reason, their parents haven't had, and they finally get out here after, what is it, Labor Day? How do you deal with that? How is that dealt with? I don't care who answers it.
I'll let her take this.
Mostly the recommendation is if a child doesn't have enough grades collected, is to have a parent conference and discuss your observations at that point. And then you look at their files and their records and gather data on that child, but you don't really have enough to, in my mind, to give a grade. I mean, it wouldn't be accurate at that point. So you're having a conference and you're discussing with the parent how the child's doing. And one of the things that I recommend to teachers is give them an assessment. If we've done a quarter assessment, like we had new kids at the very end of the year come in April, we're already giving Arizona Merit. You know, we don't have an assessment that's been done like district level. So we gave them the third quarter assessment and gathered data on that child as best we could. Then we sat down and had a conference with the parent. But we did not give them grades at that point.
Oh, then when would you start giving them a grade? They don't come in until after Labor Day.
Yes.
Then when will you start grading them? When they enroll in your school?
Yes,
now,
as soon as they enroll.
Okay, and my question here is, they've already missed 6 weeks. And what they do is they come in late and they start there. It seems to me that, one, they're getting shortchanged, and the kids who have been here for the full time are getting shortchanged. Now, I don't know how they handled that, but when I was at the high school, we handled that by saying, you've been out of school for 4 weeks, you have 4 weeks to make up that work.
It really depends on the level of the child, though.
You know what happened all of a sudden?
Yeah.
We didn't have that problem anymore.
Yeah. At elementary, it really depends on the level of the child. I mean, and we're looking at an elementary handbook. So to me, when that child enters in, we assess them, either formally, informally, we see the data that they have. You know, a child may come into, let's say, 3rd grade and be advanced, and they're not behind. But if a child is behind, then we have to work hard as educators. That's our role, to bring them up to where they need to be. So, you know, it's not, to me, and you can speak to, it's not just one answer there, because you have to look at each child individually. At high school, it's a little different because they're looking at credits and graduation and all of that. But when you're talking about a 1st grader or 2nd grader, it's a little bit different.
Okay. I just wondered
That is
because...
the progress towards promotion or retention. So where they may not necessarily have to make up that work, they may not be promoted if they're so far behind.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I just wondered because, you know, the other kids and their families are real diligent about getting them there. And these people have been on an extended vacation. They left New Mexico and they've had a hard time finding.
And when you're talking about that early in the year, we do our best and due diligence as educators to bridge that gap.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Anything further on the handbook?
No, that's good to me.
Terry?
They did a good
Kathy
job.
Cox?
Yes.
Nicole Cohen?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
John Maston?
Yes. Item 6.4 is the approval of intergovernmental agreement between Lake Havasu Unified School District Number 1 and Yavapai County Educational Service Agency for E-rate services. Mrs. Meyer.
Mr. President and members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the intergovernmental agreement between the Yavapai County Education Service Agency and LHUSD for E-rate consulting services. The term of this IGA is 3 years at an annual cost of $5,500. This IGA has been reviewed and approved by District's Council and Purchasing Department.
I will entertain a motion on 6.4.
I make a motion we approve 6.4.
Discussion on 6.4. Hearing none. Terry?
Nicole Cohen?
Yes.
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
John Maston?
Yes. Item 6.5 is first presentation and review of revised policy. Mrs. Sire.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the board, in this new format, these are a listing of all of the policies that have technical changes in them, are deletions or are additions just for compliance with language of the law. I can go through them each with you if you'd like, or if you would prefer to ask questions, that would be fine as well.
Let's ask questions.
Didn't we do that at the work session?
Yes, we did. That's why
Can I entertain a motion on 6.5 and we'll get it on so we can start talking?
I make a motion we approve 6.5 as presented.
Second.
All right, discussion. Kathy, you look like you're ready.
No?
Hearing none, I will call for the question.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. Item 6.6, approval of resolutions for fiscal year 2018-19. Mr. Murray.
Mr. President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve resolutions number 2018-19-01 through 2018-19-10. And the action described in the recommendations necessary to continue our current practices through the 2018-19 fiscal year. And the resolutions as submitted are maintenance resolutions and would not affect any substantial change in our current operating procedures.
I'll entertain a motion on 6.6.
I make a motion we approve 6.6 as presented.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, I will call for the question.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. Item 6.7 is approval of changes to extracurricular, co-curricular enrichment activities for tax credit funds. You want to take this one, Mr. Becker?
Yep, this one's mine. Mr. President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the removal of the High School Bigs Club from the list of eligible tax credit programs at Lake Havasu High School. This is being done because it was inactive for a year, and it was also funded in partnership with the Interagency Council. And as you saw in the paper today, that is coming to an end. And they were not funding this as of last year, so we did not have the club.
I will entertain a motion on 6.7.
I make a motion we approve 6.7 as presented.
A second.
Discussion. I like to see the system work. Call for the question, Gary.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. Item 6.8, approval of Smart Schools Plus service agreement. Mrs. Minor.
Mr. President and members of the board, it is recommended that the board approve the service agreement between Smart Schools Plus and Lake Havasu Unified School District Number 1. Per board policy GCQEA, retired employees may return to work under the post-retirement employment option. Smart Schools Plus is currently the program provider being utilized by district retirees for the school year 2018-2019. They are currently using the associated contract issued by Mojave Educational Services Cooperative, RFP 17A-0217. The agreement has been reviewed and approved by legal, and this has also been reviewed by purchasing.
I'll entertain a motion on 6.8.
Make a motion we approve 6.8 as presented.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, I will call for the question.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. 6.9, approval of contracted services through Educational Services Incorporated, a subsource program. Mrs. Minor.
Mr. President and members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the contract for services with Educational Services Incorporated for the subsource program for the 2018-2019 school year. LHUSD is recommending the continuation of contracted services with ESI. ESI will continue to assume the costs of health care for all of our long-term substitutes, as well as offer health care to those subs that qualify. In 17-18, the district was able to save approximately $20,000 when comparing the fee paid to ESI and what the district would have paid for health insurance for long-term subs, both certified and classified. Assigning these employees to ESI transfers the Affordable Care Act liability away from the district and allows the substitutes to work as often as they want. ESI provided a substitute fare in the fall, and the district was able to double the number of classified subs in our subpool. The certified subs continue to be steady with the same number as the district had in its pool the previous year. ESI will be conducting another substitute fair this summer. Employers must continue to permit employees to accrue and use up to 40 hours of paid sick time per year. ESI will continue to track this benefit and pay for all eligible sick time without impact to the availability of substitutes for the district.
Indemnification is provided to protect the district from any fines, assessments, and penalties related to ACA and other legislative initiatives. Our substitutes will continue to work with our sub-coordinator and use ASOP to accept jobs. Our teachers and administrators will continue to be able to request specific substitutes through ASOP, work with our sub-coordinator, and provide feedback. Cost to the district will continue to be 10% of daily rate of sub-pay, and this contract has been reviewed by purchasing and legal counsel.
I will entertain a motion on 6.9.
I make a motion to approve 6.9 as presented.
Second.
Discussion on 6.9?
I have a question. I may have known this at one time. How does a sub qualify for health care?
It depends on the hours that they work. For every 30 hours, they obtain an hour of sick day, or of sick time. So ESI actually tracks that. We don't have to do that any longer.
So it's just sick time. It's not health.
Health benefits. Oh, I'm sorry,
It's
yes.
not-
No,
they pay for it.
again, it's based on the hours they work, and ESI tracks that, and once they've accumulated so many days of time with ESI, they qualify to receive health care.
Did they pay for themselves?
Partially. I believe it's about
9%.
$300 a month.
It says 9% in the contract, doesn't it?
For
Healthcare.
healthcare.
They pay 9% for the
And we
healthcare.
never had a subs get health care.
Long-term subs did. Yep.
Long-term, for how long? That's just something that went right over my head. I didn't know long-term subs.
They were provided it for the entire time that I've been the director and as a principal of the high school.
Okay.
If they were a long-term sub, they received health care.
It had to do with the Act for Insurance Requirements, the American.
And even prior to that, we offered it to our long-term subs.
Oh, okay.
Any other discussion, questions? Gary?
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Nicole Collins?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
John Maston?
Yes. Item 6.10, approval of revisions to the 2018-19, 19-2020, 2020-2021 district calendars. Mr. Gardner.
Mr. President and governing board members, it is recommended the governing board approve the revisions to the district's 2018 and 19, 1920 and 2021 school year calendars. Rationale and specials were minimized at the elementary schools. The schools were given weekly early release days as compensation for the lost planning time, in addition to the district-wide early release days for professional development. The secondary schools, which have planning time built in via a daily conference period, have approximately 2 early release days per month for professional development. With the addition of elementary specials teachers for the 2018-19 school year, the elementary teachers will regain needed planning time during the school day. The revised calendars restore the district to common early release days for K through 12. In addition, this change restores instructional time to the elementary schools and allows parents with children at multiple schools the ability to plan for all of their students' coverage for the same days. For the 2018-19 calendar, an additional change was made to the early release days. The September 20th, 2018 early release day has been rescheduled for September 27th, 2018. This is to accommodate our 10th graders' participation in Rachel's Challenge chain reaction training during the week of September 17th through the 21st, 2018.
I will entertain a motion on 6.10.
Make a motion, we approve 6.10 as presented.
Second.
Discussion? We're back to one calendar almost? Yay. Carrie?
Cohen?
Yes.
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
John Maston?
Yes. Item 6.11, first presentation review of revised policy GCCA, professional and support staff sick leave, GCCB-R, professional support staff personal emergency religious leave, and GDB-R, support staff vacations and holidays. Mrs. Meyer.
That's a mouthful.
Alphabet soup.
Mr. President and members of the board, it is recommended that the board approve the first presentation of the aforementioned revised policies. Currently, new hires are given sick and personal days up front rather than accruing monthly. This has allowed employees to manage their days accordingly, as well as providing for a smoother accounting system at the district level.
With the Visions migration as well as a migration in Frontline, which is ASOP this summer, it is time to move all employees away from the accrual system and provide sick, personal, and vacation days up front at the beginning of each employee's school year start date. Prorated days will be given to new hires accordingly based on mid-year hire date and/or completion of the 90-day probation period when required.
I will entertain a motion on 6.11.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, Terry?
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
John Maston,
Yes. 6.12, approval of vouchers, student activity funds, and auxiliary funds. Mr. Murray.
President Masden, members of the board, it's recommended the board approve the vouchers for April 2018 and May of 2018, student activity funds grades K through 12, and auxiliary funds for April of 2018.
I will entertain a motion on 6.12.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Now, they print all this out, there's no discussion?
Well, I can ask the work session question.
Okay.
Is textbooks for Fund 555, are those replacement textbooks?
They are too, yes.
Well, I know. You already answered, but.
Okay, Terry?
Kathy Cox,
Yes.
Nicole Cohen,
Yes.
Pat Rooney,
Yes.
John Maston.
Yes. Item 7, informational items. Superintendent Asaya?
Yes, thank you. As always, I would like to comment on our gifts and donations. We do have, if you look at the monthly total for the last year of school, we had over $52,000 in donations. I particularly would like to point out that our local Rotary Club, the London Bridge Rotary Foundation, which is the Wednesday Lunch Rotary, I believe, did donate $10,000 to Lake Havasu High School for science equipment and $1,000 to the software development class. And they also, it's not on this particular one, I don't believe, but they also provided donations for each of our elementary schools and middle school at their last Rotary meeting, which will be on the next one. So they very much supported our education programs for this year. Also, we every year have our white sheet that all the students draw ads for the white sheet, and the companies pay for those ads that our students have drawn, and they have donated almost $5,000 to our district as a result of that. And then finally, I would like to mention, almost monthly, we have a donation from Curtis Townsend. He has been, if you haven't noticed it from right beyond, apparently he is a former Lake Havasu High School student, and is just is constantly on there, sometimes smaller, sometimes larger amount, but it's amazing and commendable that that gentleman has continued to support our school.
Can I ask you something about that? Do we ever send him a thank you note?
Every time.
Oh.
Every time he gets one.
Very good, because he's the only kid that graduated from the high school that does, and I guess Raytheon matches that. And he was a kid, I remember up at the high school, he got the Sweetie Scholarship, and he was a kid that very much was in doubt about his ability to pay to go to college. Went down to ASU, got his degree in aeronautical engineering, was an outstanding student and all that, and it's really good to see a young guy like that that's so thankful for going through our school district and getting this. And I'll tell you what, I think he was the first in his family to get a college education, and it just gives you a real good example of what education can do for you. And his gratitude is something that moves me every time that I see this on a board thing. And then, can I make a comment?
I have more, but can you I know it's late. I do have a.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No worry. I have a whole list. We could be here all night. I really. Thank you. A couple of things I would like to mention, and I realized during the presentation I mentioned the need for some safety spending, and we have scheduled a board work session and safety town hall for our community as well for Wednesday, July 25th, yes, July 25th, and that is going to be at the PAC at Lake Havasu High School. Chief Davis from the fire department and Chief Doyle from the police department will be present for that meeting to also be available to answer questions. And because of all of the recent events, we really do need to have a discussion about school safety. I know the board has been asking for that as well. Some of the topics, while we haven't finalized the agenda, we want to talk about physical access to our campuses, which that is the part that would cost the most money. We also want to talk about our possibility of some of the electronic equipment like cameras and other technology that connects to the PD, whether we need to move any of that forward in our purchase process. Other safety systems, for example, just something simple like, do we want to look at requiring all of our students to have clear backpacks or mesh backpacks? You know, little things like that. Training for our staff and for our security, whether we would allow staff to carry things like pepper spray or other kinds of, have other kinds of devices available. And then also some of the proactive things that we can do in our community, which would include what we talked about with Rachel's Challenge. So I wanted to get that out there. Again, that's the 27th of July, Wednesday evening, and we will be getting more information out as well about that. 25th, I'm sorry. 27th is Rachel's Challenge. That's better than the 50th. There's numbers running around. 50th is that. I mentioned earlier as well that Interagency has announced that they will be closing, and that is of concern because we do rely upon them for a lot of our elementary interventions, as well as several other things in the city. So I know we'll be having further conversation about that. And then I appreciate from the board, we did ask for permission from the president in advance that we could at least post the positions for the specialist classes in anticipation of board approval. And so we did that, and with the approval tonight, we actually will be able to offer a contract for every single position. All of the positions have been filled. So I want to say that this is Mrs. Minor's last board meeting, and how proud she is to be we've changed our sick leave policy. We've hired the teachers for our specials. There are several other things that we've been able to finalize that have been on her worry list for this year, and that we're going to miss her very much.
She's not going to miss us, though. She's going to be down there.
I'm going to watch you on the live.
Laughing.
I don't want to make it any longer.
No, we've got to call the public. Is Rachel Bishop still here? She survived. Good.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Bishop, and I am an English teacher at the high school. And I, here with some of my fellow English department colleagues, are here to speak about the language arts textbook adoption, grades 9 through 12. And I thought that there was going to be some discussion.
No, it's next month because the preview period isn't.
Okay. So just, is this an appropriate time for me then to share some suggestions as far, why we are for a particular textbook versus the others?
You can do it now if you so choose, or you can do it as part of the discussion at the next work session board meeting.
It's July 9th.
Okay, that's my birthday. I'm going to give my recommendations right now then, or what we came up with. And so after we talked about this, there were a few things that came up. A positive about the textbook adoption is that with turnover, we need solid material that provides support for new teachers instead of just kind of patchworking together items. I know that 20 years ago when I started, of course, we didn't have a curriculum, we didn't have standards, and it was teach whatever you want kind of a thing. That was very daunting and scary. So by providing them with the textbook, it would be a solid resource. Also, it would provide that consistency among all of the English teachers. The Pearson textbooks include the classics as well as modern texts that, so you can have that contrast and comparison. The testing format is very similar to the testing format of AZ Merit, including computer-based assessments where they are being asked to drag and drop, which for a lot of our students when they take the AZ Merit, that's the first time they've done that, and we've discovered that that's one of the hindrances is because the kids are trying to drag and drop and answer questions at the same time, and it's confusing. So Pearson, like I said, with their assessments, they have that, so we could get the kids into the computer labs and give them that practice time before we actually then test them on AZ Merit. They've already created materials for differentiation for all levels, for our English language learners, our struggling students, as well as our typical students and our advanced. It's focused on standards and teaching strategies that our district promotes, such as annotation, close reading, accountable talk, using sentence frames to help with that accountable talk. Also, there are unit goals that can be carried through the reading and progress into a writing assessment. So there is a performance task at the end, a writing performance task at the end. But what's nice is it's broken up into unit goals. So it's not like we're just throwing a huge essay at a student. As we are reading the materials, they have smaller writing tasks that help just build on each other, so then they are more successful with that performance goal or performance task at the end. So those are the suggestions that, or reasons why, as a department, we decided we really, really like Pearson, and we are really hoping that the board will approve that adoption. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
I'll push this again. Any suggestions for future agenda items? Hearing none, any clarifying questions from the press? And that brings us to item 10. Before I get to item 10 from the board, Mrs. Minor, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
With that, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn.
May I, before somebody seconds, may I just say that tomorrow night on PBS, Channel 8, at 5 o'clock on Horizon, there will be a sort of a debate format for the state superintendent of education, for you to watch.
Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Nicole Cohen? Nicole.
Yes.
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
Don Madison?
Yes, we are adjourned.
I wrote it. I had to write it.
Hi.